William Lloyd Garrison grew up in a deeply rooted Christian home and began his journalism career quite early. He used his ability to publish and write in order to combat slavery, being that it was his greatest criticism of American society. His creation of the Liberator, an abolitionist newspaper, his association with the American Colonization Society, an organization that helped with the relocation of free African Americans into the land of West Africa, his establishment of the New England Anti-Slavery Society, and his role as president of the American Anti-Slavery Society were just some of his contributions to the abolitionist movement. As typical to the antebellum period, Garrison's anti-slavery work became to include the promotion of women's rights as well. This was displayed primarily through his strong and clearly expressed egalitarian writings in the Liberator, and his admission of women into the anti-slavery movement as both members and influential leaders. He also contributed to women's equality through his role as an editor of a women's suffrage newspaper called the Woman's Journal, and his role as president of both the American Women's Suffrage Association and the Massachusetts Women's Suffrage Association.
What method did the person use to improve American life? Garrison was able to bring people together by using his newspaper, The Liberator, to attack slavery and advocate for change, bringing free African and white Americans to create the American Anti-Slavery Society. He will discuss with others on how to improve African lives and show how it was immoral to use slaves for profit and keep them chained like animals. Garrison also advocated for women's suffrage in his newspaper, The Woman's Journal, describing them as influential and educated leaders, who some were the members of the American Anti-Slavery Society. Garrison would transform his criticisms into writing, which would convince many to change their views on African rights and women's rights. Garrison was able to improve American life with his writing and is considered one of the greatest abolitionists in history.
What success did this individual have in promoting reform? His publication, The Liberator, gave a strong voice to the abolitionist movement. He was unyielding and steadfast with his beliefs. He said, "I am earnest. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will not retreat a single inch. I will be heard." Garrison was not interested in compromise. He founded the New England Anti-Slavery Society the following year. In 1833, he met with delegates from around the world to form the American Anti-Slavery Society. Garrison saw his cause as worldwide. Garrison saw moral persuasion as the only means to end slavery. To him, the task was simple: show people how immoral slavery was and that they would join the campaign to end it. He disdained politics, for he saw the political world as an arena of compromise. A group split from Garrison in the 1840s to run candidates from president to the Liberty Party ticket. Garrison was not dismayed. Once in Boston, he was dragged through the streets and nearly killed. A bounty of 4,000 was placed on his head. In 1854, he publicly burned a copy of the Constitution because it permitted slavery. He called for the North to secede from the Union to sever its ties with the slaveholding South. 34 years after his first publishing of The Liberator, Garrison saw the 13th Amendment to the Constitution go into effect, banning slavery forever. It took a lifetime of work, but in the end, the morality of the position held sway.
What details from the person's work made him or her an interesting historical figure? Garrison was an interesting historical figure because he seemed more absorbed by his own righteousness than the significance of slavery itself. As seen through his burning of a copy of the Constitution, Garrison was very passionate about the abolition of slavery and was not afraid to make his ideas known to the public. Garrison even referred to the Constitution as a covenant with death and an agreement with hell. Although Garrison had ideas on how to end slavery, such as having the North secede the wicked South, he was an interesting historical figure because he didn't fully think through his plan. He never thought about how the creation of an independent slave republic wouldn't end the horrifying practice of slavery. In the end, Garrison's work for reform paid off with the addition of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution that changed slavery forever and still had an impact today.
William Lloyd Garrison's reform efforts have had a lasting impact on American society. His publication of The Liberator promoted rights for slaves and equal rights for women. He constantly proved the notion that all men and women are created equal. These efforts and his newspaper gave people hope and helped spur movements towards equal rights. In addition to his effort in The Liberator, he also founded anti-slavery societies and continued to fight for rights of minorities. His efforts finally materialized in the banning of slavery and eventually helped women receive more freedoms. He was a key abolitionist that made his mark on the world and took a moral stance in a difficult time.
The Second Great Awakening is a 19th century religious movement in which individual responsibility for seeking salvation was emphasized, along with the need for personal and social improvement. William was a spiritual child and a product of the Second Great Awakening. The Second Great Awakening was made up largely of Christians who emphasized the New Testament and pursued abolition because they felt it was the moral Christian thing to do. This helps explain why Garrison's views on slavery were so clear and uncompromising. Garrison felt slavery was against God's laws and therefore had to be abolished by any means necessary. He was unapologetic about this and thought it should happen without delay. He believed this so much that he dedicated his entire adult life to the cause, publishing his paper, The Liberator, from 1831 until the 13th Amendment was passed. Since Garrison and other abolitionists were motivated by religion, they felt that violence against slavery and slave owners was justified and supported radical actions and later eagerly advocated the Civil War.